The moment the Pentagon made its announcement, the world didn't fully grasp its implications. For those following global military strategy, it was more than news. It was a signal, a ripple that would shake the foundations of one of the most tense conflicts in modern history. Imagine sitting in a room where decisions determine not just the fate of nations but the lives of millions, and then seeing one move so precise, so unexpected, that it instantly rewrites the entire strategic map. That is the story we are about to explore, a story of power, timing, and the cascading consequences of a single decision that caught global leaders off guard. To understand the magnitude, we need to look back at the relationship between the United States and Russia over the past decades. Tensions have never truly disappeared, they've only evolved. From the Cold War shadow to modern proxy conflicts, both nations have consistently tested each other's resolve, military capabilities, and global influence. Within this ongoing chess match, every announcement from Washington is carefully analyzed in Moscow. Every troop movement in Kiev is scrutinized in the Kremlin. And it was in this high-stakes environment that the decision in question emerged, changing calculations and forcing a re-evaluation of strategies that had long been assumed to be steady. The decision itself, as reported, involved a significant reallocation of resources, support systems, and military aid to Ukraine. This wasn't a minor shift, it was a statement of intent, a recalibration of power that could not be ignored. Analysts in Washington described it as a move that would disrupt expected timelines, forcing the Russian command to reconsider supply chains, troop movements, and strategic objectives. For months prior, Russia had operated under assumptions about international support and potential responses from the US and NATO. This move disrupted those assumptions in ways that experts say were unprecedented, making it a literal bombshell in the strategic sense. But the story isn't just about military logistics or political maneuvering. It's about human psychology, perception, and anticipation. Leaders, generals, and advisors do not just calculate numbers. They anticipate behavior, predict reactions, and try to model complex scenarios. When the Pentagon's action came, it introduced a variable that was impossible to fully predict. The ripple effect reached from command centers in Moscow to the front lines in Ukraine, impacting morale, decision-making, and confidence. Even the perception of power and resolve shifted, demonstrating how strategy is as much about psychology as it is about physical resources. The decision also highlights the intricate relationship between policy, domestic politics, and global strategy. Former President Trump's approach, often described as unconventional, reflected a willingness to make moves that broke from traditional expectations. In this case, the action taken was not merely tactical. It had symbolic weight, signaling commitment to allies, warning to adversaries, and a subtle reshaping of global power narratives. It was a reminder that decisions at the highest level often carry layers of meaning, resonating far beyond the immediate battlefield. Understanding the context is critical. Ukraine, already under immense pressure, faced challenges not only from an invading force but also from global perceptions of support and deterrence. The Pentagon's announcement was more than a message to Russia, it was a reassurance to Ukraine, a demonstration that strategic alliances could be counted upon, and a reminder that global dynamics are fluid, responsive, and sometimes unpredictable. For military planners on both sides, it forced rapid recalculations, realignment of priorities, and adjustments that would affect operations for months to come. At the heart of this story is also the concept of timing. In military and political strategy, timing can amplify impact far beyond the immediate scope of action. A decision made too early or too late can be ineffective, even disastrous. In this case, the timing was crucial. It was calculated to maximize deterrence, support allies, and shift momentum. Observers note that such precise timing demonstrates not just strategic insight but an understanding of narrative, perception, and global optics. This is why some experts argue that the impact was felt as much in boardrooms and media cycles as on the ground. While some may focus on the political controversy surrounding the figure making the decision, the effect on the war's practical realities cannot be overstated. Commanders on the ground, diplomats in embassies, and analysts worldwide had to reconsider every aspect of planning. Supply routes, anticipated offensives, defensive positions, all were suddenly uncertain. What had been a relatively stable pattern of military movement and expectation became dynamic and unpredictable. The Pentagon's move illustrates how a single decision, carefully calculated and strategically communicated, can have cascading effects across an entire conflict. The immediate effects of the Pentagon's announcement rippled across military and political circles. Analysts in Moscow had long assumed a predictable pattern of support from Washington, built on historical precedent and prior administrations' cautious approaches. Suddenly, these assumptions were disrupted. Supply chains that had been relied upon for months were now under scrutiny, and planned offensives faced unexpected uncertainties. Military advisors had to reassess troop deployments, logistics, and timelines in real time. Every calculation made in advance required adjustments, creating operational tension that experts note can have a measurable impact on battlefield outcomes. Meanwhile, in Kiev, the announcement was met with cautious optimism. Ukrainian officials recognized that the decision did not automatically end the conflict, but it fundamentally altered the calculus of power. Resources were arriving sooner, intelligence support was being expanded, and strategic confidence improved among commanders. Morale, both on the front lines and among civilians, often reflects perceived support from allies as much as tangible reinforcements. This psychological boost, amplified by clear messaging from Washington, highlighted the intertwined nature of military support and human perception in modern warfare. The Pentagon's move also sent a message to NATO and other international partners. It was a demonstration that commitments are not just theoretical, they are actionable. The global diplomatic landscape is highly sensitive to signals. A decision that seems tactical can carry symbolic weight far beyond its immediate scope. In this case, it underscored the United States' readiness to influence conflict dynamics decisively, shaping perceptions of credibility, reliability, and deterrence. For countries observing the situation, it was a reminder that alliances, when reinforced with timely action, have tangible consequences for both strategy and morale. Geopolitics is never isolated from domestic considerations, and this decision reflects that reality. Leaders must balance internal pressures with external objectives, considering how their moves will be perceived by voters, political rivals, and international observers. Trump's approach in this instance demonstrated an understanding of both strategy and optics, leveraging a calculated action to achieve multiple objectives simultaneously. It was a move that blended policy, military logistics, and psychological influence, illustrating how complex decisions at the highest level often ripple through multiple layers of global interaction. History, too, plays a role in understanding the magnitude of this bombshell. Russia has long evaluated potential U.S. actions based on historical patterns, often assuming a conservative or predictable approach. By breaking from precedent, this decision introduced uncertainty that, according to military strategists, can be as disruptive as physical interventions. When an opponent cannot predict your next move, their ability to plan effectively diminishes, and this unpredictability can shift momentum in subtle but meaningful ways. The Pentagon's decision exemplified how strategic foresight combined with timing can alter the trajectory of a conflict without firing a single shot. The human element remains central. Soldiers, commanders, diplomats, and civilians experience the effects of strategic decisions in tangible ways. Frontline morale shifts, civilian confidence fluctuates, and even media narratives respond to perceived changes in power dynamics. The psychological impact of a decisive move is often underestimated but can be pivotal in modern conflicts where perception, information, and morale are as crucial as material resources. By understanding this, it becomes clear that the bombshell was not merely about military hardware, it was about shifting the mental landscape of an entire theater of conflict. International reactions further illustrate the layered impact of the Pentagon's action. Allies expressed reassurance, while adversaries had to reconsider their plans. Global media analyzed, debated, and projected potential outcomes, further amplifying the effects of a single decision. Diplomats engaged in rapid reassessment, adjusting messaging and negotiation strategies in response. Every corner of the world that follows security and geopolitics was compelled to incorporate this new variable into ongoing analyses, showing how interconnected modern conflicts are with global perception and media cycles. As weeks passed, the strategic outcomes became increasingly apparent. Operations that had been scheduled based on prior assumptions faced delays, reroutes, or re-evaluations. Commanders documented shifts in enemy behavior that aligned closely with expectations outlined by Pentagon strategists. Intelligence reports indicated confusion in decision-making chains, highlighting that the decision's impact extended beyond immediate tactical considerations into operational planning and long-term strategy. It was a clear illustration of how high-level decisions cascade down to affect both immediate and future outcomes. On the ground in Ukraine, the Pentagon's decision manifested in several critical ways. Supply lines that were previously constrained were now augmented, providing additional equipment, intelligence, and logistical support to frontline units. This wasn't just about sending more resources. It was about timing, precision, and ensuring that Ukrainian forces could operate with a level of confidence previously unattainable. Commanders reported increased operational flexibility, allowing them to reinforce key positions, anticipate enemy maneuvers, and adapt more dynamically to rapidly changing battlefield conditions. In warfare, such shifts can be decisive, and the ripple effect was felt immediately in the tactical and operational arenas. Meanwhile, Russian military planners were forced to recalibrate. Strategies that relied on assumptions of limited Western intervention now faced a new reality. The United States had taken a proactive step, signaling commitment and willingness to influence the conflict decisively. Analysts note that in high-stakes conflict, even minor changes in perceived support or opposition can dramatically affect decision-making. Russian forces had to reassess priorities, divert resources, and reconsider timelines, creating strategic friction that slowed certain operations and required high-level adjustments. It was a textbook example of how strategic unpredictability can shift momentum without direct confrontation. Beyond the battlefield, the psychological impact was profound. Troops on both sides are acutely aware of the broader geopolitical narrative. Ukrainian forces experienced a morale boost, recognizing that international allies were engaged and willing to provide critical support. Russian forces, conversely, faced heightened uncertainty, with commanders having to anticipate responses that no longer followed previously established patterns. In modern conflicts, perception often matters as much as raw capability, and this move by the Pentagon effectively altered the psychological landscape, influencing both confidence and caution in operational decision-making. The international community was equally attentive. Allies of the United States interpreted the move as a clear statement of resolve, reinforcing faith in diplomatic and military commitments. Neutral parties and regional stakeholders watched closely, understanding that the Pentagon's actions could reshape alliances, influence negotiations, and alter regional stability. The decision wasn't isolated to a single military theater, it resonated across continents, affecting how nations perceive power, credibility, and the willingness of the US to act decisively in global conflicts. Media coverage amplified these effects, as analysts and journalists broke down the implications for public audiences worldwide. The narrative quickly shifted from a simple operational update to a discussion about global strategy, signaling, and deterrence. When the public perceives strong and decisive action, it reinforces the credibility of leaders and institutions. Conversely, adversaries must adjust calculations not only in military terms but also in terms of information, public perception, and long-term strategy. The Pentagon's decision, therefore, had dual effects: tangible operational shifts and broader strategic signaling. This episode also underscores the importance of timing in global decision-making. A decision made at the right moment can amplify its effects exponentially. The Pentagon's announcement was strategically timed to maximize impact on ongoing operations, influence adversary decision-making, and reinforce alliances simultaneously. In geopolitics and military strategy, timing is often as critical as the action itself. Miscalculations can diminish effectiveness, whereas precise timing can create opportunities, induce caution, and redirect adversary plans. In this case, timing elevated a routine operational decision into a global strategic bombshell. The broader lesson here is about the interplay of strategy, perception, and influence. Leaders must think in multiple dimensions simultaneously: operational, psychological, diplomatic, and informational. The Pentagon's decision exemplifies this multi-layered thinking, demonstrating how a single choice can resonate through multiple spheres. By influencing not only physical outcomes on the battlefield but also morale, international perception, and adversary planning, this action illustrates the complexity and power inherent in high-level strategic decisions. As weeks unfolded, analysts documented measurable shifts. Adjustments in Russian troop movements, recalibrations in logistics, and altered timelines were all direct responses to the decision. Ukrainian forces leveraged new capabilities, fortifying positions and executing maneuvers previously constrained by limited resources. Diplomats and intelligence agencies around the world monitored these developments closely, highlighting how interconnected modern conflicts have become. The Pentagon's decision serves as a case study in how careful, decisive, and well-timed actions can influence a conflict's trajectory without direct engagement, reshaping both strategy and perception. As the world absorbed the news, global political reactions began to crystallize. European leaders expressed cautious approval, recognizing that decisive US support could stabilize Ukraine and, by extension, maintain regional security in Eastern Europe. NATO allies interpreted the move as a reaffirmation of commitments, strengthening the perception that alliances were reliable and capable of influencing outcomes. For countries on the fence about regional security commitments, the decision served as a tangible demonstration of American influence and the capacity to shape conflict dynamics far beyond its borders. Meanwhile, Russia faced not only logistical recalculations but also diplomatic scrutiny. International media highlighted the Pentagon's move as a turning point, prompting analysts to reassess prior assumptions about the conflict's trajectory. Russian officials, constrained by public perception and internal expectations, had to navigate the narrative carefully while adjusting military operations. The combination of operational disruption and global diplomatic pressure created a complex environment, demonstrating that high-level decisions can produce multi-dimensional effects across military, political, and psychological domains. In Asia and the Middle East, the decision was analyzed for its implications on global power balance. Countries with vested interests in military alliances, trade, or strategic positioning watched closely. The message was clear: strategic decisions, when executed decisively, can extend far beyond the immediate theater of conflict. By acting with precision and timing, the Pentagon not only influenced the war in Ukraine but also reshaped perceptions of American resolve, signaling to the world that policy and military capability are interconnected forces that shape international dynamics. The decision also sparked debate in academic and strategic circles. Scholars emphasize the role of unpredictability in modern warfare, noting that when a major power introduces unexpected variables, it can destabilize long-held assumptions and shift momentum. This was not a decision about mere supplies or tactical support. It was a move that reverberated through planning rooms, military academies, and diplomatic channels worldwide. Analysts highlighted how a single, well-timed action can create strategic leverage, demonstrating the power of foresight combined with decisive execution. Media narratives played a critical role in shaping perception. Coverage emphasized both the tactical and symbolic implications, making the public aware of the high stakes involved. Analysts repeatedly noted that in modern conflicts, perception often influences outcomes almost as much as physical capabilities. The Pentagon's decision exemplified this dual impact. While it altered operational possibilities on the ground, it simultaneously reshaped expectations, morale, and global interpretation of the conflict. Public understanding, bolstered by media explanation, contributed to the overall pressure on all parties involved. The psychological dimension cannot be overstated. Ukrainian forces, empowered by the knowledge of active, decisive support, experienced improved morale, cohesion, and confidence in planning operations. Russian forces, faced with the unpredictability of US intervention, experienced heightened operational stress, uncertainty, and the necessity to revise pre-existing assumptions. Commanders on both sides understood that modern warfare extends beyond firepower. It encompasses perception, strategy, and information flow. The Pentagon's decision perfectly illustrates this multidimensional nature of influence. Finally, as global observers continued to dissect the consequences, a pattern emerged. Decisions at the highest level are rarely isolated. They create cascades of effect, operational, political, and psychological, that shape both short-term outcomes and long-term trajectories. The Trump-era Pentagon move is a case study in how strategic timing, decisiveness, and perception management can alter the landscape of conflict, demonstrating that leadership is as much about insight and anticipation as it is about immediate action. As this story continues to unfold, it reminds us of the delicate balance between strategy, perception, and global consequence. Leaders, planners, and citizens alike must recognize that high-stakes decisions can produce effects far beyond their initial scope, influencing not only the immediate conflict but also shaping global dynamics for years to come. This Pentagon bombshell was not simply a military decision. It was a demonstration of strategic insight, timing, and the profound interconnectedness of modern geopolitics. As we step back and reflect on the full scope of these events, it becomes clear that leadership, strategy, and timing are forces that ripple far beyond immediate actions. What the Pentagon did was not just a military maneuver, it was a demonstration of calculated decisiveness that shifted momentum, altered perceptions, and reminded the world that thoughtful, well-timed decisions carry extraordinary power. In a conflict defined by uncertainty, where every move is scrutinized, this decision proved that clarity of purpose and strategic insight can change the course of events without a single unnecessary risk. For viewers, the takeaway is not just about global politics, it's a lesson in influence, foresight, and understanding the weight of our own decisions. Just as a single, well-placed move can reshape a war, in life, our choices, when guided by insight, timing, and clarity, can alter trajectories we never imagined. The ripple effects of one thoughtful decision can inspire action, transform perception, and create outcomes that reverberate far beyond the moment itself. We've witnessed how strategy interacts with psychology, how timing amplifies impact, and how perception shapes reality. It's a reminder that in both global affairs and personal life, the interplay of thought, action, and consequence is profound. Understanding this empowers us to act with confidence, anticipate outcomes, and make decisions that carry purpose and meaning. As this story of strategy, power, and consequence concludes, remember that the world operates on layers, visible and invisible, immediate and cascading. Whether on the battlefield or in everyday life, the principles remain the same. Clarity, decisiveness, and awareness of ripple effects define outcomes. And while not all decisions carry the weight of global strategy, the mindset of thoughtful action, foresight, and responsibility is universally applicable. So as we close this chapter, carry with you the understanding that influence is rarely about force alone. It is about insight, timing, and deliberate action. The Pentagon's decision was a reminder to the world of what can happen when these elements align. In your own life, embrace these lessons, observe carefully, act decisively, and recognize that every thoughtful choice has the potential to shape far-reaching consequences. Because whether in global strategy or personal growth, the power to create impact always begins with one deliberate decision. And that decision, when made with clarity, can indeed change everything.